As a publicly traded person, I think a lot about how overvalued stock prices based on hype can lead to an investor frenzy and public participation, which is usually followed by collapse and, depending on the scope, leads to financial crisis. Typically, this uproar results in the exposure of corruption and mismanagement, and that hopefully triggers regulatory reforms, which tend to make everyone feel just confident enough to let the whole thing happen again. From FTX to the mortgage crisis to Enron, WorldCom, and any of the other examples that fall into this same pattern, it's been happening over and over and over since about 1720. That was the year of the South Sea Bubble. It's the 18th century, and Queen Anne is fighting wars and colonizing places because that's what England is for. But it's expensive, and the government is running up a big tab with the Bank of England. So a new scheme was created. Basically, they took a bunch of government debt and converted it into equity in a new company. This moves the debt off the books of the government, which allows England to go on colonizing and doing wars and whatever. So to make this seem like a good deal, the government grants the company a monopoly, making them the only company in England that's allowed to trade with South America. Of course, that monopoly on trade is the selling of slaves to the Spanish colonies, but the English were like, yeah, this is a great business opportunity. When the Queen of England died,
the Queen is dead!
The new administration demanded that the government debt be written off, but allowed the South Sea Company to issue more shares to make up the difference. This is essentially the same move that Enron would pull 300 years later. You lose money, you hide it, you hype the company and use the new money coming in to cover the losses. Luckily, the new King George I and many other government officials held stock in the company, and the price rises from £120 in January to £330 in March, hitting £550 by the end of May in 1720. Shares were gifted to politicians who helped hype the stock, pushing the price up to £750. To keep the price up, the company started to loan money to people to buy shares, and they used any new money coming in to pay out politicians and lords and older investors to keep up the hype. When the price finally topped £1,000 a share, some people started to sell, and that started a cascade effect. So many people had borrowed money to buy shares that then they were forced to sell off even more to pay what they'd borrowed, and by the end of 1720, that same year, the price was down to just £124. A bunch of people lost fortunes, including, strangely, Sir Isaac Newton, who famously said, "I can calculate the movement of the stars, but not the madness of men." There was a big uproar and investigation. They found all these instances of the bribery and insider trading, and some people even went to jail. But the company kept operating for a number of years after. Returning to the cycle we see over and over again, let's review. Overvalued stock prices based on hype. The South Sea Company had a significant overvaluation of company stock based on hype and misleading information, including the bribing of officials, spreading rumors, rather than actual financial performance or any value to their assets. Investor frenzy and public participation. A wide range of investors, from the wealthy to the average citizen, were drawn into investing based on the promise of the high returns, leading to a frenzy that inflated stock prices even further. Collapse, leading to financial crisis. The collapse of the South Sea Company was part of broader financial repercussions, affecting not only individual investors, but also the financial markets and economies at large. Exposure of corruption and mismanagement. The eventual unraveling of the scheme exposed deep-seated corruption, mismanagement, and unethical practices among top executives and government officials. Trigger for regulatory reforms. The aftermath of scandals should lead to significant changes in financial and corporate regulations to prevent similar occurrences in the future. But while the South Sea Bubble highlighted the need for more financial regulations, nothing actually really changed. After a momentary feeling that we'll never fall for it again, we see the pattern repeat in a new industry, but this time it's for real, and the financial complexities and the screaming man on the TV and the onslaught of social media all prove it. And hey, even if we're wrong again, it only takes being right once to get rich.